Hi, today I want to show you how you can connect your make scenario with your Nordcraft application so that your Nordcraft application can send data to your make scenario so that you can run any automation from your front end. Let's get right started with that. Now, the first step is we need to have a form on our application or some sort of data input where the user can enter data. The simplest way is just to click on the plus in Nordcraft, add a form, add some input inside of here, maybe add another input, and then in that form we're going to add a button. That is essentially a very simple form that we have. Now we can make it look a little bit nicer by giving it a 1 rem padding and giving it maybe a 1 rem side 1 rem gap, 1 rem side padding, 1 rem top and bottom padding, and then there you go. And then I can make this button with 100%, and then I have a nice form, and now I can go and make the background black. There you go. And I could go inside of here and I can make this background gray 900, and then I can give it borders of 1 rem. There you go. Now it looks nice. We got a simple basic form. I can go to the button and I can call this submit data. There you go. And now we can submit the data. Now we need to create variables for those inputs. Let's say this one will be the name, so I can do name, and in this one I'm going to make it email. Now for the name input we just keep it type text. For the email input we want to go to the attributes and change this to be email. We also want both to be required. So let's go on the input and add the required attribute, which will enforce it to be filled out in order to submit the form. Let's do required true. And then we're going to go inside of here and we're going to add required true. There you go. Now we can submit, and as you can see, it will enforce that this input needs to be filled out. Beautiful. Now what we need to do is we need to go to the button in this form and we need to give it an attribute that will make sure that this is actually a submit button. So let's go here and do type submit. Now when I click on the button, it will submit the form. Buttons and forms usually default to being a submit button, but if you add a normal button to the form, like this, and I were to click on it, it would still try to submit the form, which can be a problem. In order to prevent this, you want to add a type attribute of button. If you give the button a type attribute of button, if I click it, it will not submit the form. Now what happens when we have some input in the form and we want to reset the whole form? We can do type reset on the button. So when I fill something in here and click on the button, it will reset everything in the form, allowing us to reset the form. So this could be clear form. There you go. Now, what if I want them to be next to each other? We can wrap this in an element that is a div block, and then I just move this button inside of here. Now I want them to be next to each other. So I'm going to go here and go on flex direction, and I'm going to go with row. Now I'm going to add 0.5 rem padding. Now what do I do with the button that has overflow? In order to prevent it from overflowing, I'm going to expand on the size section. I'm going to make it flex 1, which will automatically adapt the size. Beautiful. I can add some further padding, 0.75 to this, and also 0.75 on here. And there you go. Now I can just change the styling, remove hovers. I don't like hovers. They're just too much work and they never look nice on mobile. So on submit form, let's keep this, let's make it nicer. Let's make it 8 pixels, right? While we're on it. Let's make also this 8 pixels. Let's make clear form in red, but I want a very dark red. That is a little bit, yeah, that looks beautiful. And then on here, I like that blue, but let's actually make it green. Yeah, that looks beautiful. Look at that. And now we got clear form and submit data. Now, little hack, if you want to make the font a little bit nicer. I like doing a font size of 14 pixels on Elements. It makes it look very high quality. And then in addition to that, you can just expand on the text here and give it a letter spacing of -0.2 pixels on all of them. It just makes it look very high quality. -0.2 pixels. I got that from some designer on X. There you go. Beautiful. Now we got a very nicely designed form. Now we need to be able to actually submit the form. Now the question is in Nordcraft, how do I submit the form? And then how do I call make, and how do I even get the data? Now we need to bind the inputs here to state. We need to bind them to variables. This is how we track state, how we track data on the page to then send it to the backend, to our make scenario. So what we need to do is we need to create a variable here, first for the name, and the initial value needs to just be empty. Don't have null, don't have something else, just make it empty so it equals to be an empty string, an empty text element. And then we are going to go to the name input here, we go on attributes, and now we can simply go to bind to variable, and we're binding it with a name variable. Now if I enter a name, NoCode Pro Code, as you can see, I can now take a look at the variable that I have in Nordcraft, and I will see that the value is in the variable. When I clear the input, the variable, that's the cool stuff, is not cleared because it only clears the form and it doesn't count as an event. We need to count for that. But that is a different thing, because in Nordcraft sometimes if you use native HTML functions, you can be out of state with your application. But we'll be talking about that in a moment and how we can solve that. Now let's do the same thing for the email. Let's create a variable here called email. The initial value will be empty. We're going to go to the email input and we're going to bind it with the email variable. Now when I put my email inside of here, hey@nocodeprocode.com, I will take a look at my email variable and we will see my email inside of here. Again, same problem. When I want to clear the form, it is cleared, but the variable still has the email value in it, which is a problem. So if you want to clear a form in Nordcraft, using the clear attribute is probably not the best way to do so. The best way to do so would be actually not using the type reset and manually doing this. Here's the thing. This input is bound to the variable directly. So whatever is the start value of the variable will be the value of the input. As you can see, if I do NoCode ProCode, it will be in here. So the input is directly bound to the variable. So the easiest way to clear the form, if you want to have a clear form feature, would be clearing the variable, because the variable is directly bound to the input. It's the state of the input. So I can go on events, and there is a click event. If I go on clear form, I just do a click event, and on that click event, I'm taking the variable where I can set the variable name, and I'm just going to empty that out to be an empty string. And then I'm going to do the same thing for the email. Now, if I type something inside of here, and I'm clearing the form, this time using Nordcraft's native variable setting, I'm updating the variable. And by updating the variable, I am resetting the values efficiently. Now, you see how it, when I click on here, it tries to submit the form? Otherwise, it wouldn't show this. For best practices, we want to go to this button, give it an attribute of type, and I'm going to do type button. Now, the question is, how do disabled people know that this is now a clear button? Because it doesn't have the type attribute anymore. Here's the thing. We can work with roles and ARIA labels to make it accessible and to show screen readers how to behave and how to work with that form. We can just add a role here. Roles is usually like role button if you have a div block, but you know, you can do like role clear, which, you know, role can be anything. Like it is not a valid thing. The role could be button switch. But it just helps to have a role like clear form, even though it's not necessarily needed. It would essentially happen through the ARIA labels, but I just like doing it that way. don't consider this best practices, but it is something. Now for the best practices, let's add an attribute here called aria label, and that aria label would be clear form. That will be what will be used by screen readers, so people know, oh, this button will clear the form. Now we can go to this button here. This button will be, it already has a type submit attribute, so we don't necessarily need to assign it a role. We just need to do an aria label, and that one will be submit form. The aria label is just the purpose of the element, what it does. Now we could also add an aria label on the form itself, where we can go with attributes, aria label, data form. There you go. Now we can also go to the input, add another aria label, and that can be name input. There you go. Now we do the same thing with email. We'll add an aria label, email input. Now people with disabilities can use a screen reader to use our application. So that's done. Now that we have this, we can enter information in here, NoCode Pro Code, and I can put my email in here, hey@nocodeprocode.com, and I can submit the data, which I'm not doing because otherwise it will reload the page, and we have the data inside of here. The question now is, how do we now send the data to our backend? And how do we confirm, for example, if we were added to the subscriber list, to our email newsletter or something? How do we do that? Let's go to Make and let's create a scenario first. We just go to Make, we create a new scenario, and we need to use their webhooks. We're just doing a custom webhook, and now we create a webhook. We will save that, and we will copy the address to the clipboard. Now we go to Nordcraft and we add a new API. We'll paste the webhook address in here and we'll make this a post. So it's posting new data. Let's call this Make. Now we're connecting with Make. Now we need to send the data from the form. The easiest way to do this, if you're sending data as a webhook, is through the body. This is the main payload that can also accept files if you want to, that will be sent to Make. So we can go on FX here, and we're just creating an object. We need to send structured data, so the main structure will be an object, and that will have key value pairs. So the first one will be name, the second key will be email. The value of the name, as you can see, it builds the structured name email. Now we just need the values for both. The name value will come from the name variable, which will hold the dynamic name value, and the email key will have the email variable, which will hold the dynamic email value. There you go. Now, when I run this API, you see the scenario, there is no scenario listening for this webhook because it does a post. I think if I change it to a, it should be a post though. Let's try that. Okay, there's no scenario listening for this webhook. Let's take a look at this, and let's save this. And immediately as data arrives, there's no, the scenario is not saved yet. Ooh, how do I save that thing? They changed the whole UI. Okay, there you go, save. Now let's try that in here. Retrieve data structure. Now we're just running this, and let's try sending this. Let's try running that. And now we see it says accepted. So it transmits the data. Now as you can see, successfully determined. Now we have the data structure successfully determined. We can save this, and now we can connect it with any module. Now I don't have something set up here, so what I'm just going to do, just for the sake of it, I'm just going to use the data store, and I'm just going to do add or replace a record. And let's just create a data store. Create a data store structure real quick. Let's add an item in here. That will be email, right? And that will be type text. And then I will add another item that will be name. Now let's make name first. Yeah, name. And then we will have that also type text. Let's save that. There you go. So now I have my data structure. Let's save this. Now we have the data structure. We have a key. You assign a unique key that will be used later to retrieve the record. If you leave the field empty, a key will be generated. So we'll just leave it empty. And now I'm just storing this in my data store. You can call another scenario. You can send it to OpenAI. You can do with it whatever you want. I'm just going the way of the least resistance here. So the name will come from the webhook input name, and the email will come from the webhook input email. There you go. Now we're doing name, name, email, email. We'll save this. Now we want to send a webhook response confirming that it was successful. So we go to webhooks and we add a webhook response. That response will be 200. And the body can just be the record in our data structure if we want, the key if we will. We'll save this. And now we need to save it down here. Now it's saved. Let's try this. If I run this, as you can see, it will say accepted. But we're not, let's see the response, headers, okay. Request start. We're not getting, we're only getting data accepted. So let's see if we're actually in the production webhook. Let's copy the address to the clipboard. And let's go on the URL here. And yeah, that is the correct one. So we'll just go back to make here. And let's make sure immediately as data arrives, save. Okay, so now our scenario is live, but that should work. Let's try running this. Okay, we're still not getting the ID back from the webhook response. So let's double check. Notes, previous version, auto align more, explain flow. Run once, use existing data. It should run. And okay, the webhook response does not work. Response can't be processed when scenario is not executed immediately on data arrival. Origin make. Response can't be processed when scenario is not executed immediately on data arrival. Okay, that's interesting. That seems to be an error. Let's see, response. Let's just remove the body here. Let's just have no body. Let's just try saving that. What happens when let's run it immediately. If not, we should just be able to just do a normal response. Let's try that. Get response, webhooks, response. No, it needs to go through the webhook. So let's try that again. Let's go back to our scenarios. Let's save all changes. Okay, let's turn that process all data. Yeah, let's turn that scenario on, and we're getting a response. Okay. And now there is a warning here. Let's take a look at the warning, and that is response can't be processed when scenario is not executed immediately on data arrival, of course. So let's try running this manually here. And we are getting data accept. So let's take a look at that here. Why is that not processing? The operation was completed. Response can be processed when scenario is not executed. I could care less about that. We'll just kill that response. We don't need a response. That is something you can figure out with Make yourself. They do have a YouTube channel and great documentation. I have never used it because I use, better solutions. But let's take a look at that. Let's just return hello. See if we can get that working. If not, we're just going to give up on that. And let's make sure we save this. There you go. Let's go back. And let's just take a look at this. Let's try running this. And now it says hello. So now it actually works. Okay. So I just think the issue was that we were trying to run it in their editor. So now we're getting some data back. So now the body here can be the key to confirm that we got something. We can save that in here. And now when I run this again, yeah, we're getting the key back. So the user is in our database. So let's see if that works with our little wait list. Let's see. We have data stores here. And I can go to my data store. Oh, let's browse the data store. And as you can see, I got that inside of here. Now we probably want to have a more better structure to add or replace records, but you do get the idea. Let's just delete all records. And now our scenario will be processing that, and we'll just be doing the basic connection. Now you probably want to refine things add some AI agents in the middle or do all that kind of fancy stuff, but this is the general structure. So now how do we show a success message when the response actually went through? That is a very good question. Let's make an interface for that. Let's wrap this in an element here in a div block. Let's add another div block down here, collapse the form. We're going to make this width 100%. We're going to give it a side padding of 1 rem and a top and bottom padding of 1 rem as well. Now we can just give this a very nice background. Let's just give this background gray 800. Let's make the border radius 1 rem or 0.5, 0.75. And now inside of here, I'm going to just add a paragraph. Okay, now we can go to the text and we can make it white. There you go. And now we can just put our confirmation message. You just joined our waitlist. You just joined our... Oh, Nordcraft is not saving my values, which usually happens sometimes. Let's enter that. You see how it just gets rid of all that? Sometimes it's funny. Let's type in white. Okay, there you go. Now, let's go here to this div and let's give it a gap of 1 rem. There you go. You just joined our waitlist. Now, I wanted to nicely animate because I do like nice animations. So let's create a hidden state for this so it nicely fades in. Let's go on classes and let's create a class called hidden. Now we create a new style. So we go to the styling panel, create a new style, take the hidden style. Now the hidden style is super cool how we're going to do this. First of all, on default, we're going to go to layout, and under layout we'll do overflow X clip, overflow Y clip, so it cuts it off. Now on hidden, on default first actually, we need to have a max height of 999 pixels. Oh, not a minimum height, that will look funky. A max height of 999 pixels, because we can only animate between fixed pixels. So we have a max height of 9,999 or 999 or whatever, how high that element should go. And then on the hidden class, we're going to do a 0 pixel one. Now we will also need to remove the padding because the padding is the only thing that's keeping it together right now. So we'll go back to the padding of 0, which will effectively hide the element. Now we do have a gap of 1 rem because of the gap that the outside element has. So when we go on layout here and we expand, we can just add a margin of -1 rem, balance it out, and then the only thing we need to do next is create an effect for the opacity to be 0 pixels. Now I go to the default class and I'm going to add a transition for all properties of 300 milliseconds to have a nice animation. Now when I switch the class, which I can do based on the API data, it will nicely animate. So let's go to make data size greater than 0, meaning the API was successful. If there's data coming back, meaning we have an ID confirmed. Let's try this. We should now be able to join the waitlist with a nice animation when it was done. Let's take a look at that again. Hidden, let's take a look. Data, null, size greater than 0, false. Okay, this is good. We just need to reverse the formula by adding a not. There you go. Because we want it to be hidden if it is not, so we need to reverse it because it's not a visible class, it's a hidden class. So now I can go NoCode, ProCode, email hey@nocodeprocode.com, and I can submit the data. Now it doesn't work because it reloads the whole form and it doesn't submit the event, and that was completely up to me because we forgot a very important part, and that is actually having the form trigger the API that is already bound to the data, which is something that, usually you like to forget. So let's go to the form, and on that form we have a form event here in the event section. There is a submit event. On that submit event, we need to keep prevent default so the page doesn't refresh when we submit the form, which is the usual default in the browser. And then we're just going to call make. That's it. Let's try this again. Let's reload our application, and now it should call the API. We can track the API by going into the console and taking a look at the network tab if you want to do that. Let's go to NoCode Pro Code email hey@nocodeprocode.com. Let's submit the data, and now as you can see, we get this beautiful animation. You just joined our waitlist. Thank you. And now if we want to take a look at the data, we see that this is what we're sending to make. We have the whole request, and we're getting the response back, which is an ID. There you go. Beautiful. Now we got that going. What happens when we clear the form? When we clear the form, clear the form. We can just clear the form, and then we can do another submission, and all that kind of stuff. Now, when we clear the form and we want to do another submission, we usually want this to disappear. So we actually need to move the state that this is bound, because right now the visibility of this is bound based on an API. We probably want to remove that. So we can create a variable called success that would be by default false, and that will be bound to the visibility of this element. So let's get rid of the formula and let's bound it to the variable. It's a more easier way to do this because many APIs can override a variable updating its state. So false is false, hidden false. So let's just add a not. If false is false, it should be true because then it will be hidden. So success false should be hidden true, because if it wasn't successful, it should be hidden true, right? There you go. Now I can go, never put a submit event on a button. The submit event needs to be on the form. I want to mention that. You want to go to the form, the button that submits the form will be type submit, and then the form will do the submit event. That is the proper way to do it that is also accessible, so people can click enter to submit the form for accessibility reasons or screen readers. Let's go to this make thing. On success of the make thing, we're just going to do success true. On error, we're going to make success false. And then when I clear the form, we're also going to go to success false. Now, when I go inside of here, Despia, hey@despia.com, I submit the data, I can clear the form, getting rid of the thing with a nice animation. There you go. Now, we want to have a loader in this. How do we do that? We can do that very simple. To add a loader, because usually it takes a little bit and users don't like to wait, we can just do a very cool thing. Let's go inside of here and let's go to CSS loaders. CSS loaders. CSS loaders. Oh, that's the wrong website. I like the one with GitHub.io. It's a beautiful one. Let's take that loader. Let's copy the HTML first. Let's go into the submit button. What I like to do is I like to add a div block. That is absolute. So we're going to go on display. We'll make it absolute. Inset will be 0 pixel, 0 pixel, 0 pixel, 0 pixel. So it covers the whole thing. And then the color, look at that. It's very cool. If I go to the background color, I'm just going to do inherit, which will automatically inherit the native color. Now we do have some overflow. So we'll go on this button and I will do overflow clip, and now we get this element over here. So we keep the width of the element because we're not removing the text, but we're also getting this thing to show the loader and position it. So I will center all content in here, give it a 0.75 rem and a 0.5 rem. And now in here, I'm going to paste my HTML. I will ignore that. Now I got my span. In that span, I'm going to add a style tag. In that style tag, I will now paste my CSS. We will copy that, and I will go inside of here. I will paste that, and now I got the loader. Now we need to adjust the CSS. So let's make this 18 pixels by 18 pixels. And then this one will be 2 pixels. And then this one will we just move the color so it inherits the color. Now we got a loader. Now I got this div here, and I'm just going to do a show height on it based on if make is loading. If it is not loading, it will not show it. Take a look at that. Now I can just do my name. Hello. Hey@hello make.com. I can submit the data, you see it loading, and then we joined the waitlist. Now I can clear the form and do it again. That's how you build that kind of data structure. Let's see if it actually worked. Let's reload our database that we have in Make with our Make scenario, and we see that all the entries have been added. This is a super simple thing. Make the scenario smart enough to make sure you don't have duplicate entries, but that is a simple way how you can build waitlist application, how you can understand and start integrating scenarios and integrations. Even with Zapier, it's pretty much the same principle, or N8N. Into Nordcraft, how you can automate some of your scenarios, give them a nice interface. Very cool thing to do. I would highly encourage you to take a look at that. And yeah, that's how you do that. If you want to learn more about how to build applications like this, or you're stuck at something, or you want to go to the next level and start using Xano to save lots of money when it comes to running those backend automations, take a look at my... It's not a community anymore, it's more than that. It's essentially, I think there is no word for what NoCodeProCode.com is. It's essentially, if you're stuck, if, forgive my language, shit hits the fan in your application, you need help quick, you can get the help that you need from me. Or you don't know where to start, you don't know how to get this going, maybe it's a client project, maybe it's your own idea, and you don't know how to get started, how to realize your idea, or you're stuck anywhere in the middle. My guarantee to you is if you join NoCodeProCode.com, we're going to get you unstuck in the first office hours that you attend, and we're going to get you into motion and have you make progress with your application. I would highly suggest you take a look at that. It is not just for solving your hardest problems once you're stuck, it's also to get you started, get you moving to the right direction, keep you accountable, have you ask questions. Like, it is so essential that while you're building, being able to ask questions, which API should I use, how should I structure my database, how should I approach this thing, how do I do this integration, having that guidance, having that coaching as you're building your application for yourself or your client is such a valuable asset that you can have, because it makes sure that you don't have to rebuild it from scratch, the moment it's out there. You just start making the foundation, building a strong foundation. You do have to refactor at some point, but you don't have to throw everything behind because you started using Supabase and it doesn't scale the way you want it in terms of, moving and updating things on your product. So I would highly suggest you, if you're into this and you're really into this and you want to make progress with your application, if you're not already in NoCodeProCode.com, it's probably the best investment that you can do in yourself and in your future. And yeah, I would love to see you in there. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate that. And regardless on if you join or not, it was a pleasure going through this journey together with you and integrating Nordcraft with Make.com. If you have any suggestions for further videos, please let me know in the comments. If you have any questions on anything that we did in today's video, please let me know as well. I'm always happy to help. Shoot me an email if you have any questions in regards of something that was in the video. But thank you so much for your support. I really appreciate that, and see you in the next one. Take care.